It is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
On Donald Trump's election night win.
Okay. I want to congratulate President-elect Trump. Y'all won fair and square. I want to congratulate you. I want you to do the best for the American people. Because I got some numbers here. 75 million people voted for President-elect Trump. 71 million people voted for Kamala Harris. So it's not a contest in my eyes where I want all 75 and 71 million to be successful. They're all Americans. He's the president of the United States, and I wish him nothing but the best. But we lost.
Charles Barkley shares his thoughts on his podcast, The Steam Room with Ernie Johnson.
You gave me so much. How did I do with the debate the other night?
Oh, fantastic.
He kicked that old broken down pile of crap.
Yeah.
It's a bad guy. He just quit, you know. He's quitting the race.
Is that right?
Yep, I got him out of the race. And that means we have Kamala. I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. She's so pathetic.
It's so amazing.
It's just so bad. So,
I just can't imagine.
but can you imagine that guy dealing with Putin and the president of China, who's a fierce person? He's a fierce man, a very tough guy. And they see him. They can't. But they just announced he's probably quitting.
Good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just keep knocking him out, right?
That's it.
Keep this in mind. Meanwhile,
And I just want to say this to the Democrats, which I'm an independent who voted Democratic. Do me this favor. Shut the up. When you win, you get to say what you want to. When you lose, you need to shut the hell up. Oh, President Biden they didn't get him out the race soon enough. Kamala didn't do this. We lost because we had no game plan.
so I don't agree with this. I just don't. First,
Joe Biden's decision to run for president again was a catastrophic mistake. It just was. And he and his inner circle, they refused to believe the polls. They refused to believe he was unpopular. They refused to acknowledge until very late that anyone could be upset about inflation. And they just kept telling us that his presidency was historic and it was the greatest economy ever. We just heard him again say that it's the greatest economy ever. Clearly, 70, 80% of voters don't believe that. They don't believe that about their own personal financial situation, but they just keep telling us that. And then after the debate, the Biden people told us that the polls were fine. And Biden was still the strongest candidate. They were privately telling reporters at the time that Kamala Harris couldn't win. So they were shivving Kamala Harris to reporters while they told everyone else, not a time for an open process, and his vice president can't win, so he's the strongest candidate. Then we find out, when the Biden campaign becomes the Harris campaign, that the Biden campaign's own internal polling at the time when they were telling us he was the strongest candidate showed that Donald Trump was going to win 400 electoral votes. That's what their own internal polling said.
Barkley mocking the pundits who said Biden stayed in too long is not well-founded. Their own internal polling showed a landslide loss. On the game plan front via the AP, Kamala Harris has pitched a major increase to the child tax credit as part of her presidential campaign. Rather than providing the benefit through a tax refund, she wants to send monthly payments to parents, even those who aren't working, and pay no income tax, to piggyback off that from her own website. They'll also expand the child tax credit to provide a $6,000 tax cut to families with newborn children. They believe no child in America should live in poverty, and these actions would have a historic impact. A few more. No one earning less than $400,000 would pay more in taxes. Well, that seems like a good deal. In addition, they had a plan for rolling back Trump's tax cut for the top 1%, enacting a billionaire minimum tax, quadrupling the tax on stock buybacks, and other reforms to ensure the very wealthy are playing by the same rules as the middle class. She had a plan to take on landlords who are price gouging the electorate with high rent prices. Also a win. And if you're a first-time home buyer, she was giving a max of $25,000 to help with down payments. That's just a few paragraphs. We could keep going.
We still haven't solved the immigration problem, have no viable answers, never addressed inflation, bringing all these stupid stars out to rally the vote. What was that? Hey, I love Beyonce. What bringing her out? That ain't gonna make me vote a certain way. Cardi B, I like Cardi B. That ain't gonna make me vote a certain type of way. You guys lost because y'all stupid. Come up with solutions.
A lot to get to here. First, on the immigration problem, Barkley states.
The negotiators have been inching closer to a border security deal after months of work here, but it could all unravel with former President Trump urging Republicans not to do a deal, prompting talk about blocking an agreement so that voters can blame President Biden for its failure and credit Mr. Trump with getting a deal if he wins the election.
Point the finger right here for it not getting done. Secondly, inflation was addressed by economists via USA Today. Most list the pandemic as the main reason for the historic price surge. Inflation, they said, would have happened no matter who was president, said Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics. There's a long list of reasons for the high inflation. The Biden-Harris policies that are on the list are at the very bottom.
I don't think everybody voted for Trump is racist or whatever. I'm not a fan of the guy, but he's the president. I'm gonna have to respect the office.
This has been a hot button topic since Election Day. Let me give room for one TikToker from Chicago who broke this down beautifully.
I referenced white supremacy in the post about Donald Trump, and people showed up in droves and told me I didn't know what I was talking about. And I realized that people don't know what white supremacy is. People wouldn't know white supremacy if it stood in front of a camera and offered reparations to white people who fell victim to equity initiatives. If it promised to accelerate the defunding of public education that started after desegregation. If it hosted a rally where a speaker called a colonized island a pile of garbage and said that black people carved watermelons for Halloween. If it blamed immigrants for economic problems and promised a mass deportation. If it called black and brown countries saying it preferred immigrants from Norway. If it called for white supremacist groups to stand by. If it told congresswomen of color to go back to their countries. If it called for a ban of Muslims entering the country. If it took out a full-page ad in newspapers to call for the execution of 5 black and brown teenagers for a crime they didn't commit. If it was successfully sued for refusing to rent homes to black people because its practices were too racist for the 1970s. If it pushed a racist conspiracy theory that the country's first black president was a secretly foreign-born Muslim. People wouldn't know white supremacy if white supremacist groups jumped for joy at its election. If they banded together to rush the Capitol building when he lost. People wouldn't know white supremacy if they voted for it, because they isolate individual actions without viewing the impact as a whole. Every instance of bias and hatred is treated like a single raindrop, insignificant. They find a way to excuse it so they can try to be included in its benefits. But what they've invited in is a flood.
This is why acceptance and respect are different. For example, I can accept the result, but I will never respect this man. It's also an indictment of what people vote for that I, aligned with many, are allowed to judge and conclude. These things just don't matter, which is another issue with who I decide to keep close to myself and in my circle. I didn't do it though. They did.
You know what I really want to do? I want to walk into a pharmacy and grab some toothpaste, grab some deodorant, and be out in 5 to 7 minutes. I don't want all the locked up. I don't want to have to push a button and wait 15 minutes for somebody to come. I want people to stop running in stores and stop robbing people. That's crazy. And I don't want to hear progressive or whatever. If you out here robbing stores, we need to put an end to that. Stop stealing people's stuff. Stop running in, breaking windows, and stop shoplifting. And man, I'm just sick of some of y'all.
Again, a lot here. Let's break it down. First, Chuck is, to my understanding, buying into the crime narrative. It is vital to see the data. Violent crime is down, not up, no matter what the facade of locked up goods may give. The Appeals FT Green has a really great piece on stolen goods. In part, Green wrote, for corporations, the cost of theft and the cost of preventing theft both put a dent in a balance sheet. To maximize profits, they must weigh the cost of stolen product against the costs of securing it, and they often determine that it makes economic sense to simply let theft happen. More from Green. This might be more tolerable if corporations took responsibility for their role in facilitating theft. Instead, they have placed the hapless victim, fueling the current panic to push for more law enforcement and punishment to respond to crime they have helped create. This approach makes financial sense. Why pay for guards when the state can foot the bill? Moreover, it presents a convenient opportunity for corporations to press the state to invest more in protecting their interests and the interests of their wealthy shareholders from the consequences of the class divide they've helped deepen, says William I. Robinson, a sociologist at University of California, Santa Barbara.
One thing that bothers me is that a lot of folks who voted for Kamala Harris are now saying, if you voted for Donald Trump, I want nothing to do with you.
Which is crazy.
And that's the part that we have to get over, is the fact that because you voted one way and I voted another way, that we can never see anything eye to eye, or we never want anything to do with each other, because we're getting nowhere that way.
100%.
I want to end on an important note, more from Ernie Johnson.
As much as I could say I was disappointed, I wasn't surprised.
I was surprised at the ease.
I was surprised that all those battleground states went one way, but I'm not surprised that it happened, but I'm not going to be mad at individual people for the way they voted. And I think as long as we continue with that kind of mindset where you voted that way, I want nothing to do with you, we ain't going nowhere.
So there's a lot here, obviously. The first is there's so many things, and I love Chuck, but there's so many things that he said that are just easily debunked. And it also shows me where he might be getting these pieces of information. Secondly, to piggyback off of what Ernie said, let me just give my perspective here, okay? I have seen countless TikToks from people who are saying that they are cutting off family, they'll never forgive, and I truly understand that. I also think right now we are in this middle ground of it's gonna happen in about 2 months, less than 2 months, and it's still so fresh and new. People are allowed to feel a certain type of way, but I also need everyone to just kind of take these days, try to have a mental reset, and then prepare yourselves, because it's gonna get really bad. But what I keep having this internal dialogue about is, as much as I want to have these people understand the ramifications that might come with making this decision to vote for that man, I also know that, I don't know why this name pisses off so many people, but as a Bernie supporter in 16 and 20, I know that those people would support someone like that because of his policies and how he's going to help people. So there needs to be this coalition of folks who did vote for that man, but also know the benefits. One would think, if not, then they drink the Kool-Aid and they're never coming back, but would see the benefits of how direct policies would affect them in the best way possible. There needs to be that working class coalition. There just has to. And I know they sabotaged Bernie Sanders 2 times over, which I have spoken about at length. Yet, if there were to be a Bernie 2.0 that were to come about in 2024, if we get there, I know that we would need those voices to join that coalition, because a rising tide would lift all ships. And right now, it feels like we're just at different docks.